Tillis is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Weston, just not too long ago, I voted for the CHIPS Act, and one of the reasons I voted for that is that we need to have a supply chain resiliency in the semiconductor space. I think there's an analog here in terms of how we bring back manufacturing to the United States, but by itself, particularly for the lower margin drugs, we have so many obstacles that we have to overcome. I'm kind of curious if you could expand. I would see regulatory burdens being one of them. I can see just cost basis here, a lack of tax incentives, those sorts of things. But and anyone else that wants to speak up, what should we be thinking about to make either the United States a better jurisdiction to address some of our supply chain vulnerabilities or friendlier jurisdictions? I've got a particular interest in jurisdictions in this hemisphere. I think Mexico or Latin and South America, but can you give me an idea of your thought, or give me some of your thoughts?
Thank you, Senator. I'm a cancer doctor and not an economist, so I will defer to some of my panelists here to give some thoughts on that. However, what I would say is that this is an ongoing issue that really does need to be addressed in the way that you're talking about, to have additional resiliency. So we look at semiconductors or other national security issues. Not having access to generic drugs in some ways is a national security issue.
Well, and Dr. Walensky?
Yeah, I would be happy to speak to this. The CHIPS Act is a great example of how something like this could be done. The big difference from semiconductors is that we're talking about 20,000 approved drug products. Each one of them has many phases and many facilities, 16,000 facilities, right. Key starting materials. So the framework is good, but I think what we need to layer on top of that is really an analytic approach on how we choose what is most important. And in my testimony, we have with colleagues put forward a framework for how the government should prioritize which supply chains are important. And I'll give you an example. Cancer drugs are not on the essential medicines list. Right, so one of the pieces that needs to be thought through again is what is essential. Another piece is what is really vulnerable. Going back to trade and so on, we need to be thinking about not just everything in the U.S. that's not possible, but thinking about potentially friendshoring, nearshoring. And also thinking about full supply chains. If the federal government were to move an API facility, active pharmaceutical ingredient facility to the United States, but all of the upstream still comes from China and all of the key ingredients still come from China, then what problem did we solve? That's not a good use of taxpayers' money. So we need to be really strategic in that approach in how we do it, and then we can take the steps that you have taken in the CHIPS Act.
Mr. Cockrell?
Thank you, Senator. I share your concern and desire to see a strong domestic industrial base for pharmaceuticals. I do think it's helpful to think about what's the problem we're trying to solve. So if we're trying to solve for long-term geopolitical risk, we absolutely have to think about that whole supply chain from end to end. If we're trying to solve for the shortages problem that we're experiencing right now, most of the problem is with the finished product. And so there we have to ensure we have a robust infrastructure to produce that finished product. And once you've got a facility there, that can typically make many dozens of different drugs. Mm-hmm. But right now, at today's prices, few manufacturers can invest the capital required to build a brand new manufacturing facility.
Yeah. Any suggestions on how to fix that?
Well, in my testimony, I start with a very targeted proposal, which is just to say there are certain drugs that we can say with high confidence are going to go into shortage, mainly because they've been in shortage recently. Some of those sell at prices that are so low that no manufacturer in the U.S. could make them competitively and is going to invest in bringing them to market. But at a cost of about $3 to $4 million per drug, we could make sure that there's a U.S. manufacturer that has that product, that's done all the analytics, sourced the API, got the commodities sitting there, has the FDA approval, and when that drug goes into shortage, you could turn that line on and produce that drug in the U.S. That's a pretty cost-effective insurance policy.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention something else. Thank you all. We'll also have some questions for the record for all of you. But, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention, and I was very happy to be a part of the bipartisan PBM reform bill that came out of this committee recently. I'm hearing some rumblings that it may get paired with some not-so-popular provisions as it moves through the Senate chamber. I don't know if that's correct, but I just wanted to lodge my concern because I really do hope that we can continue to work on getting that through and getting it over to the House.
We're going to be focused on getting this passed, and what has put us in this position is working in a bipartisan way, and Senator Crapo and I were just talking about that this morning.
Very good.
So,
Thank you.
look forward
Thank
to
you all for
talking.
being here.
Senator Brown.